Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Greg Palmer welcoming you to the Finovate Podcast. We've got a fun one for you today. We are going to be speaking with Joel Blake, OBE, founder and CEO of the GFA Exchange. Joel will actually be one of our moderators at FinovateEurope coming up here in just a little bit over a month. Joel, thanks so much for taking the time to connect with me today.
No problem at all. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for the opportunity. It's amazing. I love what Finovate do, and it's amazing to be able to support you, so thank you.
Awesome. Well, the pleasure is certainly on our side as well. Not only will you be moderating, but you're taking time out of your schedule today to connect with me. And there's a lot that we have to talk about. Let's go ahead and jump right in by having you give a little bit of a background on yourself for people who haven't heard of you and haven't heard of the GFA Exchange.
Well, where do we start, Greg? I guess I'm affectionately known as the rebel in a suit because I came into the fintech space from a very eclectic journey. My journey has really been one of being founded in wanting to make sure that people can get the fairest access and the ability to grow through finance as possible by democratizing access to finance. But my journey has come from real grassroots work right through to international work, policy, right down into the world of technology and doing that on a global scale. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, but GFA Exchange is something that has been a real focus for me over the last 5 or 6 years, and something that we truly believe is going to really scale and make a dent to help more people get access to the finance that they need, regardless of any difference that they may have.
Yeah, and I think to your point, there's a lot of different ways you could have started this. There's a lot of different hats that you wear. And I would encourage anybody listening to check out Joel's LinkedIn page just to see how many different groups he's engaged with. But let's start with GFA Exchange, because I think this is the way that a lot of the fintech listeners will be able to kind of understand, at least at a high level, where you are now. So can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing there and what that company is doing and how it's kind of a culmination of a lot of the work that you've done so far?
Yeah, well, GFA is a data intelligence platform that enables lenders and private capital providers to benchmark, monitor, and trade financial insights between each other in order to manage their risk exposures, their portfolio risk, and to find new opportunities. What we've effectively done is turned SME financial health insights into a whole new tradable asset class. It's something that hasn't been done before for the SME market, and we believe it's truly revolutionary and category defining, because for the first time, lenders are able to look at the performance of businesses that they're working with and in effect offload and offset the underperformance to optimize their portfolios in a much more efficient and effective way with built-in equitable and inclusion. But the business started because I'd spent the previous 3 years, and I started the business in 2019, and the previous 3 years I'd spent in policy. So I led the access to finance and growing business strategy for my county or the West Midlands region, if you like, or Birmingham Solihull within the West Midlands region in the UK. And we looked after about 6,500 businesses under that work there. And I was responsible for creating the policy of how capital was deployed across those 6,500 business conurbation. And so that meant creating partnerships with VCs, banks, capital providers, corporate financiers, CDFIs, right across to universities, Chamber of Commerce's, local councils, etc. So as I was exposed to all the challenges that different types of businesses were facing and the access to finance challenges that they were experiencing. And it was just through that work, I recognized that technology can completely democratize access to finance for any business by focusing on the one thing that every business wants, or every lender wants from a business, which is to be healthy and have the best potential for growth. And so GFA was designed to focus on financial health as the common denominator and then innovating on that in order to manage risk for lenders across the world. But obviously, from a technology point of view, it's been an amazing journey. But as someone who's a non-technologist, I was able to bring my experience in of policy, as well as previous to that policy role, actually being a funder myself. So I had the pleasure of co-founding an SME lending firm and partnered with government initiatives here in the UK to fund about 800 businesses at that time. So I felt the pain that lenders go through on a day-to-day basis when finding new businesses to lend to and in managing those risks. So just in those 2 roles before GFA, it gave me both the practical and policy experience to link with technology to deliver on the solution that we have, that we truly believe is disrupting the market. And then we look forward to seeing where it will go.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a huge amount to unpack there, right? There's a lot on your kind of personal story, and obviously the technology itself is doing amazing things. But I want to kind of talk more about the background that you have and how that kind of led you into this SME space and looking at this and thinking, okay, there's a lot of really good work to do here. This is an area which not everybody is passionate about. I think it's safe to say, but so something in this kind of triggered you and said, this is, I want to dedicate more time to this. I want to dedicate some of my own blood, sweat, and tears to this. How did SME financing kind of grow in importance over the course of the other roles that you had leading up to it?
Wow. I hope your readers don't start crying on some of this. I certainly hope I don't. But my journey started in a way that many young people, I guess, have gone through journeys where you come from an environment where people don't believe you're supposed to succeed because of your difference. And I just didn't subscribe to that. I just felt that I had something to offer. So, my first job out of school was working in factories, peeling stickers of hangers for £2.40 an hour. That was my first job after my paper round, but that's a whole different story. And then I got into, after a number of kind of odd jobs and being a T-boy and an office junior, I got a taste for the office environment. But then I got a role as an employment mentor for the career service at the time. And I was asked to basically bridge that gap between young people who wanted the opportunity to be the best that they could be, but also the professional services firms who needed access to that talent and those skills. And so that opened up the door to entrepreneurship and then the needs around access to finance for those entrepreneurs. And so I quickly recognized that in order to scale the opportunities and value for others, I needed to be in the spaces where that value could be realized. And so after spending a number of years as an advisor to banking and SME lending organizations who wanted to be more diverse in terms of their funding and supporting more different types of businesses, I then kind of did a complete segue into sport, which was a bit random at the time when I think about it now, but I became the National Diversity and Inclusion Lead for golf. But that exposed me to the way in which corporate organizations engage in different markets in order to achieve their outcomes. And so what I brought into that space was a different understanding of how commerciality can be repackaged. And by understanding through sport how sponsorship was driving value at both sport and grassroots level, it made me then see that from a grassroots to global level, that democratization of finance can actually be achieved. And so I finished that role and I effectively went back into the world of entrepreneurship and co-founded an SME lending firm or a brokerage, which then became a firm. And we ended up raising some money from local government and funding about 800 SMEs in a 3.5-year period.
That's very impressive.
So the pace and scale of funding that many businesses for us was challenging. For me personally, was a baptism of fire. We made every single mistake you could make in the book, but we also created some wonderful outcomes. Because it was a government contract we were working towards as well, there was no not hitting your target. So we were funding 20 to 25 businesses a month on average. And those businesses were new businesses each month. So we had to build up a pipeline just to get the 20 that met our criteria. And one of the things I am proud of that journey in my career was that we achieved a default rate, which was 4 times lower than the UK average at the time. And we did that by changing and creating an alternative risk model that was technology driven. And so it enabled me to see how technology could be used to bring a difference into a market and perform better than the legacy and the incumbents who were used to the old way of doing things, without losing your authenticity and purpose of why you created it in the first place. And that was a light bulb moment for me, because it kind of brought together my own personal journey, but with the experiences I'd been able to amass in working with organizations who wanted to make a difference, but also felt that they were tied into the way that things were done. And they were conditioned to always do things the same way. And so I always wanted to positively disrupt things for the better of others. And that experience allowed me to do so. And then that kind of gave me a bit of a segue into the world of policy, because I felt that now that I understood that at a practical level, with experience, with scars, but with the outcomes achieved, could I do that at a system level to create a greater difference in the markets? And can I help affect the way in which capital is deployed within the SME financial lending space? And so I got a role within local policy in what they called local enterprise partnerships at the time. And I was responsible for writing and delivering the policy of access to finance and business growth, supporting a market of about 6,500 businesses. And one of the highlights there is that I built a group of executives from corporate finance, banking, lending, investment, academia, business support, and getting grassroots charitable organizations. I got them all working together, and then was able to lead on the deployment of about £250 million of capital that came in to help high growth businesses through that collaboration. And so again, I was able to show that you can use diversity and inclusion as a positive leverage for growth, not just a moral and social and ethical thing, which is very important and should never be lost. But in the world of finance, you had to prove the commerciality of that in order to get long-term strategic investment. And we was able to prove that out. And it was through that policy work, I then got a taste of how technology can, again, democratize access to finance. So then I stepped away from policy, maybe because I'm an entrepreneur at heart and I just couldn't really fit that policy model for too long. But certainly being able to utilize that learning, and that's what became the beginnings of GFA Exchange.
Yeah, again, a lot to unpack there, but I think this is one of those things that people who think a lot about financial inclusion understand, is that there is a social imperative to doing this, but there's also a lot of opportunity for the people who do this well. And, to hear you say that the default rate, is 4 times lower than the kind of average at the time is really powerful. I want to transition here because I think there's a lot of lessons that you can teach to all sides of the equation of our listeners here. But I'm really curious just to hear your thoughts on where you see the future of financial services, because there's a lot of different factors at play here. You've obviously seen a lot of different sides to it. And I do have to say, we are actually coming up on the end of our time. So hopefully we can get a couple more questions in, but I'm very curious about that one.
Yeah, sure. I'll be very succinct. I see the future of financial services actually going back to a much more human-centered approach. I think in a world where we're now adopting technology, AI, and other solutions and other innovations, I should say, faster than ever before, it's actually creating a gap between the people. And I know there's so much worry about technology taking over people's roles and jobs, but the reality is that it's people that create the technology. And so we need to put the human back into financial services more than ever before. So I think there's going to be a number of shifts that take place from next year and years to come. I think one of those major shifts has got to be what I like to call principled intelligence, which is the fact that if we can take human intelligence and map it better with AI intelligence, we can actually unlock even more potential for business growth alongside personal growth. And I think that combination then can be used to tackle social challenges better, stronger, whilst also meeting the commercial and global needs of very commercially minded organizations. And I think that principled intelligence creates a much more harmonious, inclusive innovation market for all. So I think that's going to be a huge piece, that kind of bringing together and closing that emerging gap. I also think that the rise of data is going to be even more, but it's about getting deeper insight from that data and actionable insights more specifically to help more businesses to grow. I think we're seeing a lot of businesses and financial lenders in particular targeting businesses earlier in their pipeline rather than just trying to target mid or high growth businesses because it's become much more saturated. A lot of people are going for the same types of organizations. But with data, you can get better insight into the performance of greater potential growth businesses at an earlier stage. So I believe that's going to be a shift and a trend that we'll see expanded from next year and onwards. The desire to support businesses at a lower level, more earlier in their cycle, but putting more insight and support into them so that they can grow much faster. And I guess the final trend, we're seeing, selfishly from our point of view, is greater innovation in a much more collaborative fashion. We built our business to partner with organizations from day one because we know what we do well. We also know what we can do even better in partnership with others. And I think we've got to see more of that. We've got to see more corporate organizations partner with smaller businesses. We've got to see more smaller businesses partner with each other. We've got to see government and regulators do much more with private businesses to learn more. And I think that's a great thing to be celebrated. So those are kind of the three key trends I'm certainly seeing, and certainly I'll be talking about next year and moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the last question I have is a very selfish one. Just obviously, again, we're very happy to have you coming to Finovate Europe to moderate for us and kind of share some of these thoughts there as well. What are you really looking forward to at Finovate Europe? Are there any things that you're really hoping to see or expecting to see at the show as we have all those innovators on stage demoing their latest offerings?
Well, Greg, outside of my day-to-day with GFA, I've actually been moderating at these events for the past kind of 15 years. And I've had the real great pleasure to engage with a number of leaders at global stages talking about such issues. So it's going to be an honor to support Finovate to continue to do that. And I think it's where I find myself in my more natural space, if you like. And so what I'm going to be looking forward to talking about is actually the insights that leaders will bring to the stage. I think we sometimes forget that the role of leaders and executives talking at such events and such wonderful, innovative and game-changing events like Finovate is that we forget that it's about the benefit for the audience. So I'm excited to learn from those insights and really helping the audience to really take those insights and turn them into action for themselves, but also ensuring that the organizations that are supporting great events like yourselves are also getting their ROI as well, because the more they invest in great events like yours, as the more leaders want to be involved, as the more the audiences can get the engagement that they need. And I like to call that my moderator's triangle. We have to make sure that all the stakeholders get what they need. So that's what I'm looking forward to do, is to kind of add some value, but also learn, but take that insight and be able to shape that into dialogue that is actionable and practical for all the people who will attend.
That's fantastic. And that's exactly what we kind of set Finovate Europe up. I know for me, a large part of it, obviously, we curate things and we put them on stage because we think people want to hear and learn from them. But the conversations that you have, and for me, getting to talk to so many senior level people and hear what they're interested in, what makes them tick, is always a really interesting part of it as well. The give and take that you get when you bring this number of just intelligent, motivated people together is always really fun. And so I'm afraid we have to leave it there, but thank you again for taking the time today. Look forward to seeing you in London at Finovate Europe, which will be at our traditional place at the Intercontinental O2 in early February. Would encourage anybody who's listening, who's interested in joining us, to check us out, FinovateEurope.com. You can see Joel, you can see myself, but don't let that put you off. There's going to be a lot of really good things as well. So thanks again, Joel. Appreciate your time.
No, thank you very much, Greg, and take care.
Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.